Well, welcome. Before we dive deep into learning about hypnotherapy, which I'm really excited to learn more about myself, I'd love for you to just share about yourself, your story, your background, your passion and purpose on the planet.
Well, I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I hold a degree in psychology. I also am a nationally published author. And currently, I do work at the Unger Concierge Medical Center in Rancho Cucamonga, California. And my passion right now is trying to help people through this, conflagration we've been in with this situation with the pandemic. It's been very challenging to people. And I think a lot of people, it's more challenging on the mental side in many ways than on the physical side. I think we're getting past the physical side little by little. I've had my vaccine shots and we're starting to get out of the physical end of it to an extent. Not there yet, but getting there. But really, I've had so many of my friends, deal with these psychological challenges from the COVID. And, for me, as also I am an entertainer as well. And many of my close friends are entertainers. And literally overnight, they lost everything that they worked for their entire lives. They lost their houses and everything because they weren't able to perform for the past over a year, really, like 13, 14 months. And so not only that, as I went along, a lot of my friends that are civilians, as we say, out of the entertainment world, they also have now been having the impact of this financially and personally with relationships, the abuse in the home, also children being, in the home so much and abuse going on there. And it's because there's just so much stress, right? There's so much stress. And so, yeah, my passion right now is definitely in helping people to get past the psychological challenges of the pandemic.
Wow, that's great. And when did you get started doing hypnotherapy?
Well, I started with him. Well, it's a long story, but I'll try and make it as clear as possible. I was touring the world as an illusionist and magician, and I was in Asia quite a while, about 4 years in Asia, about a year in People's Republic of China, traveling and touring and performing. And when I was in Asia, I was exposed to trance ceremonies in Thailand and Indonesia. And for instance, in Thailand, they have the Kim Jae, and it's a vegetarian, kind of vegetarian, I don't know what you call it, a holiday or something. But what it is they go to their temples, they go into a trance state very dramatically. They go into a deep trance state by jerking and everything, and they take in their God within them. And then they take these spikes to show the power of their God. They take these spikes and they put these 1-inch spikes through their cheeks from cheek to cheek. They hang heavy weights on them. They put skewers through their tongues, and they walk through the streets for hours and hours on end. And it's in a procession, and people line the streets. Then after a certain amount of time, 12, 24 hours, they return to their temple, pull all these things out. There's no blood. There's hardly any marks, and they are totally back to normal. It's quite amazing because as a magician, of course, I knew these things were not magic tricks. I knew that they were in fact real. And so it was quite impressive to see these demonstrations. And then later I saw in Indonesia, the horse ceremony, where they actually turn someone into a horse using hypnosis. They call it trance, whatever, which is part of that. And they start eating grass. They get whipped on the back with a real leather whip, and there's welts coming up. Then they chew on glass light bulbs and they swallow the glass, but there's no blood. And when they bring them out of the trance state, the welts immediately recede and go away. So these things were very impressive to me, and they really started me thinking about hypnosis and the power of hypnosis. And when I got back to the States, I went to the Hypnotism Training Institute, which no longer exists, but it was in Glendale, California. And I studied under Gil Boyne, who's legendary in the hypnosis and hypnotherapy world. He's now passed away, but he was considered one of the greatest of all time. And so I studied under him. And then I took 500 hours of internship I did with him as well. And then I got my degree at a later age. Actually, I always dreamed of getting a college degree, and I didn't get one until I was in my late 40s, early 50s. It took me many, many years, but I finally achieved that. So that's kind of my journey into becoming a hypnotist and understanding hypnosis from, the raw, Kim Jae ceremonies over in Thailand to the modern day hypnotherapy, which has a lot of relationship actually.
Wow, that's fascinating. I love that. Thank you for sharing, because I love traveling and seeing other cultures, and it opens our mind and, to the possibilities, which I think you definitely saw there for sure.
Well, that's the thing. so many people, I think we'd have a lot less conflict in our country, in particular in the United States, although I tour and speak all over the world. But I think in every country, literally, not just the United States, but if people could get out of their small surrounding, their small bubble, and they could see other people in other cultures, they'd realize we're all exactly alike. Everyone has the same dreams and aspirations. Everyone wants to succeed in life, be happy in life, and raise their kids to have a successful life. It's the governments that really make a difference. But if you get to those countries, you can talk to people and you realize we're all the same, literally. We may have different religious beliefs or different, social structures, but in essence, we're all alike. And if we could just connect that way, but unfortunately, most people, sadly, or happily in some respects, never get away from their little 25 or 50-mile radius, and they never really understand the world. And if we do, we find that everyone could really get along quite well.
Yeah, that's so true. I love that. And it's true when we take the opportunity to meet other people, we're all from the same DNA, we're all from the same, aspect, and we have the same dreams and desires. And I think that with the pandemic, we've seen a lot of that more come into clarity because more people have been,
Yes.
living in this environment of being on Zoom and all of that.
Well, the good thing too, when you tour in other countries, is the food.
Oh my God. I know. I love eating different foods and different cultures. That's one of my favorite things about traveling. I miss it.
You learn a lot about people by the food that they have in their culture. It's but I love the world. I love people of the world. And, for me, traveling really made a difference in my life to understanding the psychology of everyone, really. And so it works in my industry, as me working with people in therapy, because I fully understand that there are different ways of thinking. For instance, with hypnosis, I have to use different approaches for different cultures and different people from different cultures because they have a different thinking process. So it's very important as therapists to understand that.
Yeah, that's really key. And I think, all healers and physicians, all the whole realm, we always have to look at the aspect of how people think and how they could be perceiving their treatment or,
Yeah.
how they're explaining a condition that could even been going on because of the different vocabulary and their thought process.
Well, and much of what you do in your business with the botanicals, all that kind of thing, they come from other countries, and so a lot of those treatments that you probably use originated in other countries and cultures.
Oh yeah, it's so true. Yeah, I mean, we do have a lot of Western herbs, so there's so
Right.
many more Eastern herbs, and I don't know all of them. There's so many, especially
Right.
from the traditional Chinese medicine culture. They have, I don't even know. It's
Yeah,
so
countless.
many, yeah, countless. And so it's fascinating. And I love that about traveling too, going to other cultures and visiting their herb shop or visiting their
Yes.
shaman, whatever it is. And that's been a really big blessing for me to see. When I went we were in the Amazon and we were able to learn about some of the plants there. And I always get so excited.
Oh yeah, of course.
Mhm.
When I was in People's Republic of China, when I went in my first, I guess you call it like a Walgreens there, but it's not Walgreens, it's their own thing. And
Mhm.
see all the roots and all the different strange items in there. It was literally sort of like, I would have to say at that point in my career, because I was, kind of naive, it was sort of bizarre looking. I mean, there's so many interesting and fascinating. They have these jars and it looked like something sort of out of, in a way, a classic monster movie, because they have all these like man roots and all these things that just, they look Westerners, but in reality, they've been practicing this medicine for centuries and it is quite effective.
Right. Yeah. The traditional medicine and the roots of healing goes way back. And what about hypnotherapy? Is that something that's been used for, I mean, you mentioned in the Chinese culture, but is it have a history where you can trace it further back?
Well, hypnosis has a kind of a very beginning. Really, when it was first, I mean, okay, even back in the Greek era, they had sleep rooms and they had the
Mhm.
god, which was about sleep. So hypnosis was being practiced throughout all time because it's a natural ability that's already in us. It's all hypnosis, I should say, so that your listeners and viewers understand. It's self-hypnosis. So even when you're working with a hypnotist, whether it's in a stage show or in a therapy session, you're actually doing the hypnosis. They're just helping guide you, but it's within ourselves. It's a natural God-given ability. So it's something we're born with that we just never learn how to utilize or control. So having said that, it goes back long, long ago. And really, though, where it started to become prevalent or understood better was with the original Franz Antoine Mesmer in France. He did what was called animal magnetism because he didn't even truly understand what he was doing. It just happened to him as he did his practice. He was amazed at it, and he thought it was some kind of animal magnetism that came out of him into someone else or whatever. But nevertheless, that was the start of hypnosis, hypnotherapy. He would have rooms where he'd have a big tub filled with water, and ladies would have rods sticking in the water, and they would all have a group hypnotherapy session, what we would call now. But then came along charcoal and brain and using it for mental illness and all of that. And they developed it more into hypnosis. Unfortunately, Mesmer became kind of ridiculed in his life, unfortunately, even though he discovered something that was amazing. And so then, like I say, others came along, they refined it originally to use for mentally ill people. Today, I will tell you that in my hypnotherapy and the people that I work with, all of us hypnotherapists, we don't work with mentally ill people because we're not medically trained. We are lay practitioners. And so, there's psychologists, psychiatrists that are far better suited to work with a mentally ill patient. So what we work with is mentally healthy patients that are looking to make a positive change in their life using the tool of hypnotherapy and hypnosis.
Oh, great. And then can you kind of what is hypnotherapy exactly? Like, let's have a little grounding or ground rules there so people can understand what is it? Because I think a lot of people have different ideas about what happens.
Well, I think part of that generates from the general public concept of hypnosis. And a lot of that comes from, it's a negative really, because a lot of that comes from actually starting back, you can go back to 1918 when the cabinet of Dr. Caligari came out in German Expression era in Germany between World War I and World War II. In that movie, a silent film, there's a hypnotist called Dr. Caligari at a carnival, and he keeps someone, a somnambulist named Cesare, hypnotized 24 hours a day in a coffin. At night at the carnival, he brings them out, and then he predicts who's going to die. And then that night, that somnambulist in a hypnotic trance goes out and murders those people. That was sort of the start of what people thought about hypnosis. Of course, you can take the French novel Trilby, which became Svengali also. So all of those were about losing control of your mind, someone else controlling your mind, and horrible things happening. Now, this continues to this day, because even a couple of years ago, there was a film called Get Out that was very popular. Did you see that film?
Yeah, totally. Yes, I did. That's a Jordan Peele, right? The director.
Yes, yes. So they're still putting this forward that hypnosis is evil, the hypnotist is evil, that they control you and make you do things you don't want to do in your life. So these stereotypes have really populated the subconscious people in the United States and the world. And so unless you've actually listened and learned from a true hypnotherapist or hypnotist, these things are a block to you having access to that inner special ability that we all have. So my job always is to educate people that modern hypnosis and hypnotherapy has nothing to do about a person controlling your mind. Now, I will tell you, you might have saw or may have heard of the original Manchurian Candidate film. Now, that's not one with Denzel Washington. It's one with Frank Sinatra and Lawrence Harvey. And Angela Lansbury was in it too. But that film, the premise was the person was a soldier and he was caused to be a sleeper agent and assassinate a politician in America when he got back to the States. When you combine hypnotic drugs with natural hypnosis, you can literally sidestep people's, self-preservation or their morality or their belief systems, and you can make people do the things they don't want to do. But having said that, hypnotherapy, like I do and all hypnotherapists do, is the natural process. It doesn't involve any kind of drugs, and therefore you will never do anything you don't want to do when you're hypnotized. So therefore, you're learning how to do this. You're going to succeed at doing this, and you're going to make a change in your life. I had a friend. He made a wonderful T-shirt, and it said, hypnotherapy, because you have the right to change your own mind. And that's literally what it comes down to. And I will tell you, the basis of hypnosis is simply opening the imagination, and the uncritical acceptance of an idea. That's the basis, and that's the real reason how it works.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. I love that, because it is important for people to know. I mean, there is a lot of thought that has been developed over years, that, like you said, with movies and different types of things with Hollywood. It's been very Hollywoodized.
Comic book,
Yeah, all of that.
novels, all
Right.
of it.
And so it sounds like it's very healing when it's done correctly, and you're like working with someone with yourself who has so much training and knowledge behind that.
People don't understand that everyone gets hypnotized. Everyone listening or watching this gets hypnotized almost every day. As I mentioned, it's a natural God-given ability to relax. Now, I'll give you a couple examples. One is this: how many times you've been driving down the highway, you're listening to the radio or thinking about something, all of a sudden you get somewhere and say, how did I get here so quickly? It's actually called highway hypnosis. And if you look in the warranty book of most vehicles, you'll find a whole page explaining it, because it's that common. And what happens is you're comfortable, you're sitting in your seat in your car, you're safe in your mind's eye, and you go into that hypnotic, maybe the lines in the highway are repetitive, whatever. You're thinking about something else, or listening to the song, and you go into that hypnotic zone, and all of a sudden that there's a time lapse and you're where you're going. Mm-hmm. Here's another: how many times have you, or maybe you haven't, but many have, where you're sitting in your living room or you're laying in your bedroom safe at home, you're watching TV, and during that time, your partner, husband, mom, dad, whatever, they come up to you, they say something to you. But when that show's over, you cannot recall what they said to you. Have you had that happen?
Yes, I think so. I think that's very common.
That's because the TV opens your imagination. You're in a place you feel safe and secure, and you go into that natural hypnotic state. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is, we do it all the time. It's just we don't do it on command or demand. And that's where I come in, because I can teach you how to use that ability and being strong and empower your future life.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that. And so it sounds like so you're working with someone and you're teaching them some of these techniques, what specific health conditions can someone use hypnotherapy for? Like, what would be like the top, I don't know, like 5, conditions? Because you can use it for lots of different things, correct?
Well, I never talk about a laundry list of what can be achieved, but here is the thing. Yes, there are specific things that we can work on, smoking, weight control, things like that. But truly, in life, when we have major issues with relationships or with some issue such as an abuse kind of with substances or whatever, mm-hmm. A lot of that comes 5 basic fears. And this is what we're dealing with the COVID situation and my Covenosus program. There's 5 basic fears that sort of shape our entire life. You see, when we're young, we have many gifts, but if they're not protected by the people that raise us or take care of us, like our parents or guardians, then those gifts become pushed aside and we never really use them to our benefit. So here's the thing. Age 1 through 7 or 8 is when we have an uncritical acceptance of idea in our mind's eye. We don't have a protection that says, I don't like this, or I don't want this to be accepted in my mind. So through those years, I'll give you an example. When we're driving a car, you're driving with your parents, you're a little child in a car seat in the back. You're humming or singing to the music on the radio, good Beatles song is on or something. And then your mom or dad turns around and says to you, can you cut that noise out? I don't want to hear it. Mm. Well, you may feel from then on, you either can't be outgoing in public, or maybe you can't, literally you can't ever sing in your life, or you feel that you should always be quiet. You shouldn't be outgoing, all those things, whatever. That goes in the subconscious. It becomes a broken record, mm-hmm. and it's influencing and framing our life for the rest of our lifetime. Now, the fears that I'm talking about that are the key fears are criticism, which we just talked a little bit about, sickness and aging, poverty, death, and ultimately being unloved or rejection. Mm-hmm. So what my job is to help people go back to that time when they were young and essentially find out what shapes their current life, why they feel the way they do, why they, and by the way, I should say, we're not, doing what the other health professions do as far as mental health. what we're doing is we let the patient, I call them clients, but I work at the medical center, so they call them patients. But with my clients, what I do is I help them to guide themselves to their own solution. We don't have a roadmap like psychologists or psychiatrists. That's not our job. We help them go into the trance state, and then we help them to gently explore their mind and find their own solution. So this is the fun part of mental health, where you find your own solution and then you learn how to create that solution. So we find those basics, but normally it really comes down to the feeling of being unloved. So many people in their young lives had so many challenges, and psychologically it shaped them and formed them. And unfortunately, it holds them back from their greatest successes in life.
Yeah, it sounds really empowering when you're making, choosing your own path of discovery in your mind, as opposed to someone like laying it out like XYZ, as you're moving through. And is it similar at all to EMDR? Are you familiar with that particular therapy?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that hypnosis is similar or very similar, but I think it sounds like, because when you're in the EMDR state, you are discovering things for yourself and guiding in that way. So that's interesting.
Well, very much
yeah.
Yeah. And I will say all roads lead to Rome, as it were. So what you're talking about, what I do, there's probably so many similarities, because it would be natural for it to be so, because it's within us. It's natural to us. So I can see that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Good. Well, let's switch things up and talk about your amazing new program, the Covenosus Hypnotherapy, because I'm super excited to learn about that. And I know you want to talk about it too. So tell us about it. What is it? How did you develop it? I mean, it sounds like because, we need it.
Well, I will tell you that first of all, just to kind of add a cap to everything too, with, psychiatry and psychology versus hypnotherapy, we work very rapidly, and this is a good intro into what we're going to discuss. We don't work with people endlessly. When I have people come to me, first I need to determine, are they willing to have a change in their life? Do they really want to change? Or are they really happy being in pain? I know that sounds strange, but a lot of people want to hold on to the past because that's what gives them their identity. And so unless they're willing to let go of that identity and start a fresh life, unless they're willing to let go of those memories and that pain, whether it's with a spouse, they had a horrible divorce, whether it's children that had abuse as a child, unless they're willing to let go of that and create a new identity and a new fresh start, then I can't help them. However, if they're ready to make that change, then hypnotherapy is fabulous. I don't believe in doing more than 4 sessions with anyone. And I'm talking about 4, maybe at the max 2-hour sessions a piece. If I can't help you help yourself in that time limit, then probably you need to go to one of the other modalities of treatment, such as, psychiatry or psychology. So that's the beauty of hypnosis versus other modalities of treatment. It can help you rapidly, or it simply isn't for you. And so I'm going to my Covenosus program. Covenosus is a 4-session program. And the first session is it's a half hour. We just talk like you and I are talking, so that I get to know the person and I can determine, are they a good candidate to make it happen? And then once we do that, and I establish that you're ready for a change, not you, but you are ready for a change.
I'm always ready for change.
I bet you are.
Yeah.
Awesome. But yeah, once I determine where you're focused and what you want to do, then we move on to the 3 sessions. The first one deals with I determined there was 3 major issues from COVID and this pandemic. The first one is stress and anxiety. So we deal with the stress and anxiety first, and we do that session and focus in on that and those issues. The second one is, well, actually I'd say that the third one, because we did the opening one for the half-hour visiting. So the third one. But the third one is about sleep, because sleep has become so jagged, because people have stayed home so much. They've lost their normal, activity. And so they've developed other sleep habits and lost a lot of sleep and not having proper sleep. And that really leads to disaster ultimately. So we go to sleep. And on the final one, it's confidence building, along with some weight control if necessary. But confidence is so important, because we've been in these Zoom things. We've been sitting in with our ties and everything on, but our pajamas on our bottom. And we're not used to being in society and interjecting into society again and dealing with feeling confident as we go back to those workplaces. And so those are the main issues that I deal with. Now, I will tell you, oftentimes when I'm working with a client, we end up a totally different place. And the reason for that is we go to those 5 fears ultimately. And so the whole 3 hypnotic sessions, ending up going there and working on that all together, because that could be the core of everything. But I keep it topical on those topics and work with those in general. But ultimately, many people need to go a little deeper. Now, when I say deeper, it's no more difficult than working on the other ones. It's simply acknowledging and facing other issues other than what we're discussing.
Right. Yeah. And I really liked what you said about being someone wanting to make the change. I think that is so key, because I always have that kind of like pre-interview session with my patients too. Because if they're not wanting to do the work, it's kind of pointless to work with me because I require them to do the work. It's
yes, I don't want to
yeah.
take their money.
Right. What's the point, And I like what you said too about, when you were mentioning pain, some people, it's like, that's one question I always ask, like, what's your vision of what you would like things to be? And if they can't see through anything like with pain, some people just take that as like their hold point, and they can't see past anything except who they are within that state. And then it's like, well, if you don't want to be the next version of you, I can't help you.
That's right. Exactly what you said is correct. You're so correct on that. And, the thing is, a lot of people want to change because of other people's influence on them. And that won't work. They want to, like with smoking, for instance. Like a lot of people with smoking, and they say, well, I don't want to smoke around my kids. I want to change. I want to do that. Or my wife doesn't like me smoke, or I can't smoke at my workplace. I really want to quit. They don't really want to quit. They don't want to quit till they know that they're going to end up with a breathing tube, and they're going to end up unfortunately, very ill at the end of their lifestyle. And they really need to understand that this is critical, and they, for themselves, need to make this change and need to quit. If they just want to quit because of someone else for any activity, whatever it is, it's not going to work, because ultimately you have to want it. If you don't want it and you don't want it bad, it's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah. It's so funny when I'll be seeing, one patient and they say, oh, I'd love for you to have my husband or a partner or whoever, come and see. I'm like, well, if they want to, they can, but you cannot make the appointment for them because
that happens. Yeah, in my hypnosis show, which I do hypnosis shows, and people say, wait, he does hypnosis shows. Hypnosis shows, just quickly, is a group hypnotherapy session in reality. The people that seek me out to come on stage, they're looking for a release in their life for that moment in time. They're looking to let go and have permission to just have fun. Many people come up, the very best people are the introverted people, because for that hour, they're able to be special, to be the center of attention. And so it really is a wonderful thing in reality. Now, I won't say all stage hypnotists are good or kind to people. I have a certain morality, and I make sure that people come up, have a positive experience, and I give suggestions for confidence at the end. And but so when people come up, not only do they get therapy, but the people in the audience have laugh therapy. So it's a very positive, if you do it properly, it's a great group therapy session without people even knowing it. So you're helping people in a positive way without people even realizing, because it's through entertainment. But I want to get back to what you were saying about people having other people try to represent them. I sell audio downloads after my show. In fact, I have them for weight, confidence, success, memory, all those things, and sleep, all those issues. And so people send their friends up sometimes saying, well, my friend back here wants to do this or that. I said, well, you send them up here to talk to me, because I won't sell you one, because it's not that I have to talk to them to see where their head's at. Right. So I understand fully what you were just saying.
Yeah, that's so key. And it's really important. And that's like the empowering piece, I think, with health in general and with hypnosis, with any type of healing modality. It's like you have to have I can't think of the expression, but the power, the igniting, the fire under the ship.
You do.
Otherwise, it's like you're not going to go anywhere.
The same way that people become successful in life, having that drive, is the same way you will be successful in making those changes in your life. You have to have that passion and fire to say, I've had enough of this. I
Mm-hmm.
want to do a new beginning. I want to change, and I'm going to have it. And then I can help you, or you can help them as well at
Mm-hmm.
that point, because they're willing to do the work, as you say, or, to do whatever it takes.
Right.
You
Yeah.
have to do whatever it takes to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really true. It is. It's like when someone's in that chronic ill state, it's like everything, they've lost everything, so to speak. They're like, okay, I'm at the last straw. And then so
Right.
I'll do whatever it takes. And so that sometimes those are my best patients, because they'll try anything, and so they listen like, oh, okay, I'll do that because I want to see myself get better.
And also, many people try to ignore their issue. They
Mm,
want to ignore it because they run from it. It's a natural thing to do. You don't want to acknowledge it. You don't want to face it. And so you run from it all your life. So
mhm.
having to have the courage to decide you're going to face that inner darkness or that inner situation is very difficult. And so they'd rather say, well, they'd like me to do this, or my wife wants, instead of saying, I'm ready to face whatever's inside me. And I think that's why a lot of people tend to be hesitant to go to a hypnotherapist, because they might find out things that they have hidden long ago. They already know it subconsciously,
Mhm.
but they don't want to bring it to their conscious mind again because it was so hurtful.
Right. Yeah, it can be painful, but then that's how you heal, right? That's how you
Right.
can make the step into that next direction. I want to go back, speaking of steps. So the 3 steps of your program, well, there was like a little mini step in the beginning, but the
Yeah.
main the main steps. So stress and sleep, and then confidence building at the end,
Yeah.
which could have some weight loss or things thrown in depending on what
Yeah.
they're
Because we've all
needing.
been sitting around in front of Zoom forever.
Right. I know. Yeah.
And we've been eating snacks. I gained about 15 pounds through this thing. I'm still fighting to get rid of it because that's difficult, because we're not as active. We're starting to be, but I live in California and we've been shut down literally. I mean, really
Yeah,
shut.
you guys have been having a really hard time.
Yeah.
That's
And I go out and do walks, but it's not the same as being active all day long, all the time.
right. Yeah, and when you're sitting and interacting, it's very different.
Right.
So it sounds like from what you were saying that the program is really short,
Yeah.
because it's just a couple sessions, is 4 sessions total.
Yep.
So does anyone ever go through the program more than once? That's it.
As I told you, how it works out is that now, again, we may do just the basic program, and someone may come back to me and want to go deeper on an issue, and then we can do that, as an additional thing. I'm happy to do that. But like I say, generally in those sessions, we'll find that out anyway, and we'll probably end up
Mm-hmm.
dealing with it that time anyway. Normally the sessions are only an hour each, but some days I'll go 2 hours a session, depending on what's happening and how the client's reacting and all of that. I had a lady in Florida about a month ago I worked with. We started into this stuff, and it ended up we really had to go deeper. And turned out it was stuff to deal with her mother when she was little.
Mm-hmm.
And we cleared all that. Actually, we did it all in 1 hour, believe it or not. My instructor, Gil Boyne, who I mentioned earlier, who was very
Mm-hmm.
legendary, he wrote the book Transforming Therapy. And he could integrate multiple personalities in like a 4 hour, 3.5, 4 hour session, which was unheard of and unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't look at boundaries. Bruce Lee
Mm-hmm.
always said there are no boundaries. There are no boundaries. So
Right.
why can't we solve problems in 2 hours or 3 hours? Why?
Right.
What? If you have it within you and you know what it is, and then you have the power to solve it. Of course, they have to keep practicing self hypnosis on their own. That's
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing. Because after each session, I give an audio to them to keep reinforcing the hypnosis we do. And so they're actually training themselves to achieve a new skill. And it's an ongoing thing with the person,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't need me to keep doing it with them. I help them
Mm-hmm.
to jumpstart it. I help to find the issues, and we help to solve them to an extent, but they have to continue, as you say, doing the work down the road, keep doing the self-hypnosis and keep self-improving themselves as they go along in life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So coming to see you, they're doing a couple sessions, and then they're doing their work at home to continue the healing and growth on their own time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not just like, bam, everything's like
No, no.
roses.
It's a long process,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's not a process that I need to be part of for a long time.
Right. Which I like that part of it. It's like it really empowering to have the patient or client be like, okay, we've done this work together. Now, what are you going to take with it? How are you going to move forward in your next phase of your healing journey. And you got the steps, you got the
Well,
techniques.
you know, and if you ever watch the Rocky movies, which I love those movies, there's a lot of good things to learn from those movies, philosophy. But, you know, what you learn in those films is by the last one, you know, he has Clubber Lang's coach or whatever, helping him in the ring. And he's going to go into training in Russia, right? And he doesn't tell him what to do. He says, I don't need to tell you what to do. You know what to do. You just need to do it. And so he starts training himself, doing everything. He knows all the tools that he needs and everything he needs to do. And he no longer needs a coach to tell him how to do it because he's learned it. And that's the same way here. Once I teach the people how to do self-hypnosis, once I tell them how to go in the right direction, they know what to do. They just have to do it, you know? But there's a Rocky films that I just love. By the way, I met Sylvester Stallone a couple of years back. Very nice guy. But actually, I had his brother open for me at a casino because his brother does singing and he has a band. And so anyway, a little connection there. But there was a line in the movie that I just love. He said, let me put it the right way. He said, one step at a time, one punch at a time, one round at a time. That's how winning is done. And that's really it, you know? It's one step. It's one step at a one punch at a time, one round at a time. And in our case, you know, one hour at a time, one day at a time, 1 month at a time. That's how winning is done. You take it as it comes. My mom always said, which we have on her tablet, God love her. She said, live every day like it's your last. And I believe that because this is the moment we're in now. Forget about the past. We can acknowledge it. We can face it and we can get rid of it. Forget about the past. Don't worry about tomorrow. Worry about right now, today, this hour, and each hour will build on the next, and each day will build on the next, each month. And ultimately, you'll create a new future that's so positive in your life.
That is so true. Yes, being in the moment. And I talk about with patients all the time about they have had this, they've created their reality around their illness, right? And they're living every moment that reality within the illness. And once they can take the step out of that reality, then they can see the whole new vision, the whole new road ahead of what it's endless possibilities of the healing. But it's like they get so stuck in the mire, in the mud of like, you know, like the quicksand, sinking deeper and deeper.
It's like verbiage, words are so important. How many times do you would have a patient, I would have a client come to me and say, my cancer, my something. They're claiming it as theirs, as their own. No, that's an invader. That's not yours. You don't own it. You don't need to own it. So I work a lot with using the correct framing as far as words and how that affects people. With hypnosis, the subconscious mind, words mean everything. So it's very important we educate people. No, it's not it's not I. You know, unfortunately in our lives, everything revolves about us. So we tend to want to make it ours. But when it comes to negative things, it's not yours. It's something else that's an invader. It's something that's hurting you. It's not yours. Or, you know, my molestation as a child, you know, no, it wasn't yours. It was the other person that did it. It's their problem. You need to let go of it. It's not mine. So we have to help people get past owning their pain.
Right. Owning the illness. Yeah. That's really a huge key component of changing the way that people view health, because it has, you know, unfortunately in the past, I don't know, maybe like 40 years, I guess would be a good number, probably more than that. Yeah. But it totally, you know, the view of how it's when the perception has completely changed. Like, okay, you have this, take this, and then everything's going to be fine. And then if it comes back, we'll just give you more of that. And then, you know, and more and more and more. And then, so you're taking 20 medications, but everything's going good, right? You're still able to do everything you were supposed to do, but you're never addressing the root cause of how did you get to that place in the beginning? And I think it's been very jaded. It's like the rose-colored glasses, and they're coming off now. I think people are
right.
Right.
Well, you know, a lot of when I go into hypnotic sessions with people is I help them by doing a hypnotherapy version of Gestalt therapy. The beauty of hypnotherapy is in that situation, rather than having an empty chair to talk to, you can become that person, then become you, and you can have a conversation, and you can then find a way to let go of the pain that you got from that person, maybe even tell them you love them ultimately, because you begin to understand where their head might have been. With the lady I referenced about a month ago, she had issues with her mother, but ultimately she realized, looking at it from her now adult life, the stresses that her mother was under and why she probably treated her, or, she was the youngest of all the children, the last, and a lot of things. And so by seeing it from an adult viewpoint, you're able to understand or have empathy for that person more so than you could as a child. And then framing it from the adult perspective, you're then able to tell that person, I don't appreciate what happened, but I do love you and I understand where you're from. And you can be them and they tell you that they love you. And in essence, you're able to finally talk to that person and work everything out. But unlike normal Gestalt, you're actually are that person and you are understanding their viewpoint more so, and you're actually interacting. And so it's a really wonderful technique. And so again, you don't have to hold on to those things because they're baggage that no longer is needed. And you're right. A lot of the medications people go to and things in many ways. Now, I don't diss medications, but I will tell you, Dr. Unger, who I work for at the Unger Medical Group, he really tries to use alternate modalities like hypnotherapy, acupuncture, acupressure. He tries to use all those things in concert with drugs so that he doesn't have to use as much drugs. I will tell you, just so you know, he's one of the people that helped bring Ozempic to the medical field. He helped develop that. And you've heard those commercials, Ozempic, that commercial.
Right,
that's some of his work right there, because he's one of the top diabetes doctors in the country. But even he does not like to use medications unless it's absolutely necessary.
Right. There's a place and a time for everything.
Yes. But I think what you do and what I do, there's solutions here that could really help people, because long-term use of drugs is never a great solution if you can avoid it.
Right. And I think what you were saying earlier too about the aspect of really getting down to the root cause of what's going on. If we're never moving forward and we're using whatever it is, whether it's a vice or a medication, it could be a bazillion things where we're not allowing ourselves to move forward, and medications can suppress the ability to heal.
Well, and you're giving that medication control over your life.
Right. Yes. Who's driving the ship?
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so back to the program. So we talked about the steps of the program. And so in regards to the pandemic, why do you think that there's been this, why do you think it's made such a huge impact on the mental health aspect of society? I know that there is an aspect of stress. I totally understand that. But do you think it goes deeper? Is there something that's underlying? Is it because more people are investigating what they want their true place in life to be because they have more time on their hands? Is it, and so that brings out an aspect of themselves they have to address? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think what you addressed just now is part of it, because we've never had to sit quiet and listen to ourselves as long as we have during this pandemic.
Right.
But when you sit there and you have to face your reality, who you are, what your life's about, and you've just got TV to look at or something, you eventually have to face up to what's happened in your life. Now, the pandemic essentially is like throwing gas on a fire. We already have all the issues we've been discussing during this entire talk. And of course, the basic fears. And of course, what bigger fears than, from the pandemic, we had to face death and many people poverty, sickness, obviously, and being unloved because maybe you don't have people that are caregivers to help you with this situation. So all the 5 fears I told you about, the basics, they're all and front and center with the pandemic. So, and then you throw the gas on it with the pandemic, and every day, of course, we know the media has made this thing way more upsetting to people psychologically than it needed to be.
Right.
I'm not saying that deaths haven't happened. I have a friend that has a warehouse across from it as a crematorium. Eventually they had to have 2 big freezer trucks filled with people to the top because they couldn't cremate people fast enough. So I am not negating the medical aspect of it. But what I am saying is the media could have helped us through this in a much more positive, much more productive way. People, there's a thing called deaths of despair. The suicide rates are 1,000-fold above what they were. And why is that? Because of the media, literally. The media every day bombarding us with the more deaths, the more deaths, the more deaths. Of course, there was a political component to that. And I'm not political, so I'm not speaking who I would choose as a president or anything. But they definitely use this as a tool to get President Trump out, help that situation. And I think that's really disgusting, to be honest. And unfortunately, because of how the media has done, and you notice the shift now, it's now about how many vaccines have been out, how many vaccines, all of a sudden, we're not talking about the deaths or the mental issues or the suicides. They never really covered the suicides much. They were creating them, but they didn't cover them. So I know it's a really heavy thing to say, but that's really how I feel.
Yeah, that's really true. We have seen a huge shift in mental health, and some of my patients, I'm even trying to get in for referrals. There's a waiting list, of like 3 full months to try to have a mental health practitioner, counselors, whatever they need, and it's not my specialty. So I usually refer out. I don't have the in-depth training with that. But I think you hit on a really key component there, is that we have been driven to a specific aspect of visualization, which I myself don't watch the news. I don't do any of that. Yeah, I don't do it. If I feel like, if it's something important, I know that I'll know, because my husband will tell me, or I'll go to the store and the person at the clerk will tell me, or if I really, somehow I'll find out. I'll need to know if it's like a huge, massive deal. But otherwise, I don't need to have the bombardment for my brain and health all the time.
Absolutely. And the news, the TV and the radio open your imagination. And once your imagination is open and if you have a certain political aspect to it, you may be on a liberal channel or a conservative channel, and you believe in those basic precepts. And so what you do is you uncritically accept everything that's going in there, and it keeps shaping you in a negative way, and you don't even know it. So I always caution people, be careful what you watch on TV, because what happens is you become in a hypnotic state, and you end up being influenced in a very negative way. And yeah, I rarely watch the news anymore. I really gave it up about middle of the pandemic, because I just didn't want to hear it anymore. Because what I wanted to hear was how many people, have recovered from.
The positive things.
Yeah, I don't mind hearing the negative as well, but you do that very quickly. You say the numbers have gone up. However, here's how many people recovered today, and here's what's being done to help them recover, and here's the new medicines that are coming along. You don't have to fixate the whole news program on deaths and what's happening. And that's what they really should be. It's too bad they can't be taken to court over it, honestly.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it kind of rolls out.
Yeah, exactly. But there's so many wonderful things. And, every day is a blessing. Every day is a plus. So it's just a shame, because I think if you and I were running the news, we would have had people much happier. And, when you start breaking people down psychologically, they're more apt to catch or to be affected by COVID or by anything, by flu, any kind of illness. You'll get cancer, you'll get a lot of things. We really don't know the ultimate downside of this because of what the news and the media has done.
Right. Yeah, this is true. Well, I think we're moving through things. Things are getting clearer. Yeah. We're, moving in the right direction. Yeah. So everything's working itself out. It always does. Yeah, it totally does. Okay. So in regards to, I had one more question about the hypnosis. Sure. I think we covered a lot of the Covenosus. Oh, well, how can people, what if they want to make an appointment you're doing telemedicine or televisits, right? So they can do.
Yeah. I think this is wonderful. My mentor always said to me, he did a lot of phone hypnotherapy, and I never could quite get my head around that. How could you do phone hypnotherapy? But now with Zoom, it's amazing. And I think it works better than in-person hypnotherapy. And I'll tell you why. You may have found this as well. But for me, what works great about it is people are comfortable in their own home. They're comfortable in their own chair, in their own place. By doing my hypnotherapy this way, it takes a lot of those preconceived ideas from movies and comic books away, because now they're not in a room with me wondering, am I going to do something to them that's negative or anything else? And also they can video right on their phone or their device our session. So it takes all that negativeness away, and I can just get right down to helping them. So it's really powerful doing hypnotherapy over Zoom. In fact, I'm not so sure I'll go back to personal sessions much after this, because I found it to be more productive doing the Zoom sessions. But yeah, we do via Zoom, and it's very nice because you can set it at your own time. You don't have to drive somewhere to do it. And it's great in so many aspects. And as I say, it's actually better than one-on-one sessions, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
And
It's been a huge shift for my practice, and I'm seeing a few patients I mentioned before we started talking at the farm, but that's a different scenario for the veterans. But I think it's huge because patients, especially when they're chronically ill, they don't have to leave their house, or if they have chronic
right,
anxiety, they don't want to have to get in the car, find a parking place, all that stuff that creates more anxiety for them. So
exactly.
yeah, I think it's been a huge blessing, and I won't be going back to it either, because it helps me actually to have the energetic, not like a wall, but it helps me have a barrier and able to see things in a different
Right.
way in myself. And I don't feel I find myself so fatigued seeing patients too. I'm able to have more stamina in that way, which is important.
Yes. Yes, you get 4 sessions
Yeah.
in a day, and
Mm-hmm.
and it's much easier for everyone. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a great way to do it. And all my clients have told me that they love doing it this way. So
Nice. That's great. Okay. So if somebody wants to make an appointment for the COVID Gnosis therapy, or see you for some other therapy, they can find that on your website.
yeah, or the very best way, I always give out actually my cell phone number. It's 951-315-1942. And I'm happy to talk to everyone. If people just want to chat for a while, I'm happy to do that too. But yes, my website is www.covidnosis.weebly.com. So covenosus.weebly.com. And my email is hypnomezmer at yahoo.com for your listeners. And actually, the first 10 listeners that email me at that email address, I'll be happy to send them a free relaxation download audio.
Oh, nice. Okay, I'll make sure I put all that into the show notes. And I wanted to ask you about your thoughts about, can hypnosis shift the DNA? Is there any, what's your thoughts personally about it? Is there any type of study that has been done that's shown that we can use hypnosis to shift the DNA or change a mutation in DNA? I know you mentioned like cancer and things like that earlier.
Yeah, well, hypnosis is not a science.
Mm.
It's a phenomenon. So it's very hard to study hypnosis in general, although they have done studies to show parts of the brain that are working during hypnotherapy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But truly, it's something that's within us. It's sort of, I don't want to say it's a mystical thing, because it's definitely a solid tool used in the medical profession, but it's not measurable per se, at
Mm-hmm.
least not where we can determine what you're talking about. But Dr. Bernie Siegel has done amazing work with cancer, and with hypnosis and cancer. And if you read the teaching of Dr. Bernie Siegel or watch his videos, you will be amazed at what he's achieved with cancer. I work with ladies with breast cancer.
Mm.
Now, having said that, again, it's not about just the hypnotherapy. It's using that as a modality along with traditional medicine and all of that.
Right.
So it's a good coupler. It adds to it. It helps you to do a much more effective, quicker curing, perhaps, than just doing the medicine by itself. And maybe even helps to negate some of the usage of the medicine and the treatments.
Mm-hmm. Oh, great. Yeah. And is it covered by insurance? Is it something that's usually covered, or is it an out of pocket expense usually?
With me, I don't do insurance with it. Now, when
Yeah.
I go to Unger Medical Center, they use their insurance and it's covered
Okay. So
through
it
their.
depends on the
It really
clinic or
does.
something.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't charge $1 million for what I do, so it's a very reasonable way of working. The Covenosus program is under $500 for all 4
Nice.
sessions.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I was just curious because I know that people ask me that kind of thing all the time. I was just curious about it for
Yeah,
referring out. And yeah,
individual sessions are $150 for an hour plus session.
nice. Okay. And one last question before we wrap up. If you had an unlimited budget right now, what would you do with that money to make the biggest impact on the planet?
That's a good question. If I had that, I would actually, if I had that kind of money, I think I would develop a program for prisons,
Mm.
because they really, prisoners and also seniors are really the lost people.
Mm-hmm.
And we throw people in these prisons, we just throw them in a cage, sort of like putting an animal in a cage, and we expect them to come out different than when they came in. Well, they do. They come out different.
Right.
So I would love to have, you might call it a prison ministry in a way. go in and I could do hypnotherapy, or I could do work with people and help them to do exactly what we've been discussing this whole time, to find out why they are the way they are. And if they're ready for change, which many of them are, by the time they've been through many years in the incarceration, they're looking for some way to change their lives. And so wouldn't it be wonderful if I could go in and work with these people, women and men, and they could come out understanding why they are the way they are, and also making that wonderful change so that we can make a better world, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's great. I bet that would be pretty easy to get rolling. I think that California would be totally on board with that.
I would
Yeah,
hope so,
yeah,
because
because
they're overloaded, and
yeah,
you have to understand, these people are parents, they have children, they're real
right. They have
people,
lives.
and
Yeah.
I would love to do that. That would be a great life's work for me if I could get something like that happening.
Yeah, my father-in-law he was going to the prison. He was given one particular person to work with and just meet with them and just like, just have a conversation, help support
Yes,
them, and I think that that's really, it's so needed. It's like you said, those are the two populations, especially people in prison care. I can't even imagine what that would be like to be in that environment,
it's just
and
and many of them are in there for, in a way, not even of their own fault, many of them, I
right.
mean, you've got people that are just because they smoked some pot, or they did. I'm not saying if that's positive, negative. I'm just saying, all those people that did that, they're in there for that in California, should be released now anyway, because,
Right. It's
right?
not illegal
You know,
anymore.
yeah. So, but I mean, I'm just saying, so many people got in the wrong place at the wrong time, maybe because
Mhm.
of their life situation when they were younger as teens.
Mhm.
Many of them teens, very young when this happened to them. And so what they just need to have that reinforcement. And if they're willing to make that change, like we discussed, I would have to determine that. But if they're willing
Right.
to do that, then just think of how we could bring them out of that and bring them in the world again and make everything work better for all of us.
Well, that's great. I'll give you the unlimited budget for that. No problem.
Hey,
And you have a book, right? Do you have a book too out?
no, I don't have a book. I do write. This is very interesting. I write for Scary Monsters magazine, because
Nice.
ever since I was young, I loved classic monster movies,
Yeah.
and it's the last of the great classic monster magazines. It's on newsprint. So I have an article right now in the current one coming out at Barnes and Noble. It's called "Of Monsters and Magic." It's about the use of real magic props in classic monster movies. It's 5,000, it's 10,000 altogether word articles, but it's going to be in two separate issues. But I've been writing for them for many, many years. I also write for the Magic Unity of Might magazine for Society of American Magicians. So that's where my background as an author comes from.
Oh, nice. That's great. For some reason, I thought you had a Covenosus book. Maybe you're making it and you haven't put it
I'm
out yet.
I'm starting to think about writing it, yes.
Okay. Well,
But I
maybe that's where.
haven't quite got my head around it yet. I've been too busy.
Right. Oh yeah. Well, that's good. You're helping a lot of people and that's amazing. Well, thank you, Michael. It's such been a joy to have you on the show today. I learned so much and I'll put everything we talked about in the show notes so people can find you super easy. And thank you again for joining us today.
All my pleasure. Thank you for having me as your guest. I really respect what you do. And I'm so excited that you gave me this opportunity today. And I wish all of you and your listeners and viewers all the best in the coming year.
Oh, thank you so much.